Welcome back. And for this segment, we are going to be focusing on water. And World Water Day comes up on March 22nd. And it's going to be celebrated at the end of this week here in Belize. Here to talk about the theme, water and sustainable development and World Water Day in general, we're joined by Hayden Brown, Human Resources and Public Relations Manager for Belize Water Services. We're joined by Jennifer Allen, Director of Public Affairs for the Contra Costa Water District Partnership, and Tania Williams, Acting Director of Hydrology. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Okay. So it's always a very fascinating subject once we get into World Water Day or water sustainability, because many of us live in coastal areas, and if there's not an ocean in front of us, there is a river nearby. So it's very difficult for people to understand why water sustainability needs to be a priority for us. So why don't we start with that?
Okay. Well, World Water Day this year is celebrated on 20th of March. Universally, it's celebrated on March 22nd, but as you were having a conversation earlier, nobody's going to want to leave their house on a Saturday or Sunday. So we try to celebrate as much as possible on a weekday before the actual day. To get into your question about why it's important that we celebrate World Water Day, it's simply because water is essential. We need it to live. And we're not creating any new water. The water that has been here from, if you want to say 1 BC or 1 AD, whichever, from the existence of life, it's the same water that we're using now. So we need to be very careful and, as the team says, sustainable in the use of our water resources. It plays a very vital role in our day-to-day activities. I mean, to make your coffee, you need water. So we don't want that water to be dirty. We want it to be clean. So this is the premise on which UN Water and various water partners internationally, locally, regionally, see the importance, and we dedicated an entire day to it. So we really need to put out our awareness of the importance of fresh water and the role that it plays in our day-to-day lives.
So let's move into our panel here, and in terms of your contribution. And I want to start off with Hayden, because he has a smile like he's bursting to say something. Tell me.
Where water and sustainability is concerned, Belize Water Services, I know you have introduced Jennifer already, but we take water very seriously. It's the nature of our business. And in trying to do the best we can in managing that resources, we have partnered with Jennifer's company out of California, Contra Costa Water District, better known as CCWD. Acronyms, we like those kind of things. That partnership developed out of some of the same collaborative effort in looking at ways to improve what we do within Belize. I can allow Jennifer to come into the conversation, because the partnership really brings added value to what we do in Belize, and the expertise they have certainly helps and blends into what we are trying to achieve at Belize Water Services. So what we have done we have had visitations back and forth between ourselves, meaning we visit their facilities, and they have come and visited our facilities, and certainly in that process we have learned from each other. But in the setup that we have entered into the partnership, there is like a teacher and a student kind of thing, and Belize is definitely on this part the student, but I'm sure that Jennifer will tell you that they've learned from their experience with us, and we certainly have picked up a lot of the technical things that will make us a better, more efficient company at the end of the day.
Before you move into the details of the partnership, let's just talk about Contra Costa a bit.
Sure. So Contra Costa Water District, we're based in Concord, California. We serve eastern and central Contra Costa County, so it's in the Bay Area, so going towards the northern part of California. We serve about 500,000 people in the area, and we're dependent on water that is flowing throughout the state of California, coming down from the Sierras into what we call the Delta that flows out to the San Francisco Bay. And so we're very dependent on water that is flowing throughout the region, throughout the state. And so we're affected by anything that happens upstream from us, and depend on that water supply to provide our customers with safe water. So we got interested in this partnership with Belize Water Services off of some coordination our general manager at the time was doing through his connections in Washington, D.C. And when the partnership opportunity came up, it was just a great way for us to be able to share some of the information that we've learned as we've developed our agency since 1936. We went primarily from serving agriculture way back in the 30s, and then have developed into primarily an urban water agency, where we're the largest urban water agency that is dependent on the Delta in California, and we're a contractor of our federal government.
And what has been the benefits on your end from this partnership?
We have learned so much. Especially one thing I'd focus on is that we've learned a lot about emergency preparedness. In California, one of the biggest hazards that we're concerned about is earthquakes. They're very unpredictable. You know, we could have a few come in a few days, or we could not see one for several decades. But hurricanes, what you deal with here, you're on alert every year for it, and so the preparedness that you have is something that we really value, the lessons that we've learned from our partners.
Okay.
Yes.
As it relates to, just quickly, as it relates to our side of things, we have definitely picked up on systems, technological systems that help us to monitor. For example, gone are the days when we would have visited our sites to look at our tank levels and that kind of thing. Now we have electronic systems that monitor our tanks, namely a SCADA system. And so in the offices now we have personnel who can see our tank levels and give like our water treatment plans. They also have access to SCADA, and so they can see when to turn off or to gauge their pumping, so that we don't have like our water, our tanks or reservoirs, not tanks, but our tanks being overflowed, that kind of thing. So we have come a long way with the relationship. There's also things like our maintenance programs, putting things like that in place, better maintenance programs. Certainly we are big on what we call non-revenue water, and again, these are areas where Contra Costa has contributed in our development.
Yes, and just to spin off of what Mr. Brown was saying, is that with World Water Day and with water in general, we realize from the government side that there is a need for integrated management, which we're already doing. And we can see from the composition of the World Water Day Committee locally in Belize, we have every single water partner, government-wise, that is engaged in the operational management or management of water resources in general. They sit on this committee. And so this shows that the integrated management process or view that we need to take, that we're already doing that. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the flyer, but we have about several different government departments who sit on this committee, and they all play an integral role in the management of water resources. So
and
it's the same spin-off that Ms. Jennifer said, that it flows from in the mountains down out to the bay, and in Belize we have the same situation. It's the same situation all over the world.
And when you put that in context, I love that that's where we're going, because when you think of threats, I joked in the beginning that it's hard for us to think of a world with no water being a coastal community, also with very dominant rivers passing through the majority of the districts. However, when you think of the source of the water, specifically for rivers and the environmental challenges that we face, both climate change, but also some of the threats that we've had, for example, in the Chicky Bowl, and some of the traditional uses of the rivers that we are accustomed to over the years in certain areas, and how those pose a threat for the water sources that we use. So let's talk about that.
Definitely, this is the Anthropocene era, as you know, scientists say it. It's just the human era. So it's like we're the ones getting in our own way. We want to have the cell phones, we want to have the tablets, we want to Skype, we want to Viber, but all of these technologies have a water footprint, and that's what we need to realize, that every single thing.
How would a phone have a water footprint?
It has. You need water for your processes. So we're using water.
Okay.
I think if my memory serves, it's like 15,000 liters of water for two slices of steak. Wow. I mean, so on your plate, you go to the Chinese and you pay $10. It's like, okay, 15,000 liters. Really, no. I mean, we don't think about that.
Yeah.
But we know that the food is there. So with the pillars or the areas of concern with sustainable development, you have health, nature, energy, urbanization, industry, different sectors. And so we're trying to highlight that individually, each of these sectors that are so important to existence of life has a water footprint. Yeah. So we need to be very, very responsible in how we use them.
And to spin off from Tennille's conversation, I know one of the things that we're very mindful of is the regional partnership. While I was impressed talking with Tennille this morning, that found out that we do have some regional partnership with Mexico, not on the other border side, and we know the challenges there. But indeed, that is definitely an area where we need to start to focus our attention, and it is something that in sharing with Contra Costa, that is definitely something that struck me, because one of the things that they do very well is that they take water and they have some extremely huge storage where they basically, you can call it saving water for a rainy day kind of thing. And
well, so it would be the opposite, wouldn't it? Saving it for a dry day.
Exactly. Yes, you're right. And so they have done that well. Of course, it does cost a pretty penny to do that, but relativity for us, we just need to start to look at these kind of things, because, I mean, while we take our Belize River for granted, it can really take just something, somebody to do something really daft, and we are challenged.
Yeah.
And that river supplies, I mean, water for
3/4 of the country.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's something definitely that regional partnership is something that needs to be stressed, and is very important for where we're going, because protecting our waterways is not an option, but it's something that we really need to ensure happens.
And Hayden, you joked about, being able or needing to have better relations in terms of specifically the Guatemala side of the border. And we know that because of where the waterways begin, it is important to build those relationships. I want to bring it over to Jennifer, though, in terms of how you are able to handle, or how I should say Contra Costa specifically is able to work in terms of preserving the original water sources from any potential threats.
So California water issues are fairly widespread, especially because we're currently in a drought situation, and that is having major effects on water supply availability for not just specific regions, but throughout the state. And so back in the 90s, where our water district is located, we were very impacted by salinity intrusion coming from San Francisco Bay. And so that would cause the salinity in the water that we were treating to ebb and flow throughout the year, and we would hit peaks where people actually said that their water was crunchy because of the amount of salt that they were tasting in it. And so we constructed an off-stream reservoir called Los Vaqueros, where we could pump fresh water up into when the water was fresh in the delta, and then save that water, so then when the salinity changed in our source water, then we could release water from the reservoir and provide, we could blend that in order to keep the salinity level constant. What we found, and actually in in 2013, we completed an expansion of that reservoir to provide even more water quality benefits, but then also some water supply reliability. In this drought, we've actually found that we've been able to take on partners with some of our other water agencies that are nearby and transfer water to them. And where they were being cut off at their pumps, they were able to look to us to transfer some water. And those were regional partnerships that have not happened before. And you know, where agencies get siloed, and the same as countries, we get siloed in things that we're doing. And it really is more about working together and figuring out how you can benefit the broad region, because there's not one solution. It's we all need to work together.
Yeah, and water is literally for daily survival.
Yes.
Water is life.
Every individual
human
person,
And, I mean, as
man, woman, and child.
As time goes by, you have scientists, just like you have water scientists. So there's a lot of information out there, and people are actually getting really creative. I read an article where you are stealing clouds, and I was like, wow, like, how do you steal clouds? And it was, I think it was in China, that they learned to put mist in the air so that the rain falls before it leaves their village. So if you see the rain clouds coming, you make the air more moist, which makes the rain come down. So the more moisture I put in the air, it rains in my village, and then the clouds just pass over yours. So I mean, we're getting really creative. We're noticing the importance of water. We're noticing that, you know, we need to be proactive in doing this. So this is why we feel compounded with the transboundary issues. These have been there, and we haven't had any issues. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been really instrumental in dealing with the whole transboundary issues for us, and that's how we got through with the Conagua in Mexico to have that partnership. And so we've had that partnership with Mexico for decades, where we're monitoring the management of the Rio Hondo watershed. And as Hayden rightfully said, that in the West, it services 3/4 of the country. And so that creates an issue for water security, and it's not just the transboundary. It's our usage, it's how we use the water. I mean, for something as simple as solid waste management. And I mean, in the rest of the week leading up to Friday, we will be having other appearances talking about different pillars. But just drawing an illustration, you see a bag, you're in the bus, there's not a trash can, you throw it through the window. Water is a natural solvent, so it may take hundreds of years for it to dissolve that plastic, but eventually it does. And we hear all the cancer information. Oh, you don't heat things in plastic, you don't want to store water in plastic. I mean, we're getting in our own way. If we dispose of it properly, then you can have some control mechanism in place to minimize the effects. We can't avoid it. Because technology brings problems, as we like to say. Change brings problems. But we can manage them. And so that's the whole focus of World Water Day this year, with sustainable development, to show you what sectors are being impacted and how you can help minimize the effects in each of these sectors.
And usually when we talk about World Water Day, or anytime we talk about looking at the sustainability of water, we always go back to the wastage that occurs within households as well. So let's look at that, Hayden. I know you can tell us a bit about that as well.
The wastage. In terms of wastage, one of the things that I believe Belize Water Services continue to do is the educational bit in terms of talking to its customers about wastage. I know we have had challenges, especially in Belize City, with our hydrants, where sometimes, especially in the hot times, families have their own keys. Nothing of our business. And they turn on the hydrants and water is just spraying up in the air. But all of that is very concerning to Belize Water Services because it's processed water. It's not raw water out of the river. It has already gone through its entire process, and it's really there for proper consumption. And so we stressed it in a lot of our advertisements. You will see us doing conservation tips, making sure that you're not just wetting the lawn without thinking about exactly what you're doing and the timeliness of when you do it, so that you don't necessarily have to put as much. And we at Belize Water Services, we want to make sure one of the things that customers don't always think. We want to make sure people pay for what they consume, and not a drop more and a drop less. And so sometimes we ask for the collaboration to, like we have our program, read your own meter. I know, Belize wouldn't necessarily want to go that route. People don't read their meter. They say that's our thing. But a lot of time that does help in the process, because you would pick up on a leak quicker. And while legislation-wise we consider discounts for leaks, there is still the challenge of how much is wasted. And so whichever one of us, either the customer or ourselves as a company, see that somebody consumption is increasing incredibly, and so we send out teams to look at those things. It's a service we offer to our customers. It's better if we do it partnership-wise, and so we try to stress the importance of wastage. And
let me ask a question. In terms of the amount of public awareness that has been undertaken in terms of conservation of water, do you think that people have received the message and internalized it, that they begin to think, and not just so much in terms of financial implications, which is a great way to connect with people, but also just being able to recognize that there is a need for us to not use more than necessary?
I think the awareness will never ever be enough. Awareness is continuous. So on average, to put it into perspective for Belize, because we can speak for Belize on statistics, and we use 13.5 buckets of water per person for Belize. So multiply that by, argument's sake, 300,000 per day. So, I mean, we're talking about a large volume of water used on a daily basis. And as Hayden rightly said, if we're equally paying for the usage, then we equally use only what we need to use. We absolutely need to use. And as you said, finances is one of the ways that you tend to get people to listen. But apart from the finances, I look on a social perspective. I look at Africa, I look at India, and I see children swimming in dirty water, and I imagine my own children with almost their skeleton showing, and I'm like, okay, no, this cannot happen. So awareness, I think it's not just a governmental thing, it's not just a BWS thing. I think it has to be a personal thing.
Where that is concerned, we have definitely, one of Jennifer's reasons for being here, we're looking at developing a curriculum. Education is definitely the way to go. One of the things myself and Teline was talking about earlier, we want to catch the young ones. So we're going to grow up a nation, or a nation of young minds that says we don't waste water. Introducing things like a water policeman in the schools, where kids will turn on a faucet of water and just leave it running and go off running and playing, and then maybe a teacher passes an hour after and turn it off. That's not the way we want to use water responsibly. And so in that vein, one of the things that we are working with our partners is to develop an entire curriculum for schools, and really start to inculcate that into our children's hearts and minds. Because we also know how it is with our children. When we go home, they'll say, "Daddy, turn off the tap. You're brushing your teeth." And
Teacher said. That's all you need them to say. Teacher said.
And so I believe that that's where one of our focuses as a company. But as Denise said, if we will do our bit at BWS, it's not only our business, it's all of us who are partnering. And we do have, like she said, I think we're really having a good synergy with all the parties or the relevant bodies that deal with water within Belize as a country, and even outside of Belize. Belize Water Services have gone international. For many people that don't know, through a partnership, we have gained a lot of knowledge, and we have done a lot of good things as a company. I can speak to one of our main statistic. I've talked about non-revenue water. For people who don't know, that's the water that is being processed and does not go into sales. So when I joined the company in about 2001, a little while back in WASA days, it was, our non-revenue was at 60%. So for every 100 gallons, 60 was being thrown away. Thrown away either in leaks, theft, that kind of thing. And so, but now we have that percentage down to about 24, thereabout. So there's a significant gain there and efficiency. And so in terms of sustainability and reliability, those are the kind of things that BWS will continue to do and look at for greater efficiency.
Now, I want to bring it to Jennifer just to touch on the curriculum for a bit before we talk about World Water Day celebrations, because while for people in California, the understanding in terms of water restrictions or rationing is something that they can understand, bringing that into context here would be a bit unheard of. So let's talk about building a curriculum where children begin to understand that while we may seem to have an abundance, it is absolutely necessary for us to think global as well.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, a big part of this partnership that we've had has been about the importance of world awareness of water issues. It's not just what's happening in your specific community, but understanding how water issues change throughout the world and wherever you go. And I have to mention very quickly the agencies that have funded this partnership, and in order, so I don't get it incorrect, it's the Public-Private Infrastructure Advisory Facility, or PPIAF, and the Global Water Operators Partnership Alliance, or GWAPA, and they're subsidiaries of the UN Habitat and Inter-American Development Bank. So a big part of, as I'm saying, of our coordination is talking about the conservation and getting into the classrooms, talking about the kids. And what I personally have been talking with Hayden and his staff about this week is trying to identify the specific issues that we want your youth, your children to understand in order to start grasping what it takes to get water from your river to your tap. And so, while in California the idea of conservation, of rationing, is maybe a little bit more visible because of drought, there are other visible things that you can see through lessons, where you could see through contamination, where we have some potentials for models that can show a watershed, teaching kids what a watershed is, putting different contaminants using dyes in it, and then mimicking rain, and letting them see how all of those contaminants flow into their river source, and then it contaminates the water that would be going into, that it has to go treatment into their tap. And so even though the issues aren't necessarily the same, the lessons are the same about the importance of protecting your water source and then also respecting it.
Yeah, and I guess in Belize, the example that people can really reflect on is the changes in our weather patterns, with the amount of rain we get per year as well. Now let's talk about World Water Day celebration on Friday. What can people expect if they come out to the event?
Okay, for World Water Day, we have, as I mentioned before, the various local water partners, of which BWS is a member, that we have an open day exhibition. Okay. Which means that this year we have asked each booth participant to display what they're doing with water and how it relates to sustainable development. So you can expect about 10 to 12 booths out there, and each booth will be displaying what they do on a daily basis for water, where it's water management, it's water monitoring, whatever aspect of water that they deal with will be displayed out there. Some of the booths have interactive games where you have to label the rivers, maybe label a watershed. You know, it's just different ways we're trying to use to let the knowledge stick.
Yeah. Will there be a demonstration on how to steal clouds?
We'll take that lesson. I'm taking some home with me.
And your booth?
I think Jennifer will definitely want to do that.
That's going to be, I'm going to have to claim that in customs. I don't know how that'll work.
With our booth, we have just about everything Tenila has talked about, interactive activities, so people can interact with the company and understand clearly what we do as a company. We will certainly have our technical people out there, lab people, because a lot of time, you know, people will say water falls out of the heaven, and so it should be free. Comes down and God allows it to rain, but it goes through an entire process.
Yeah.
And that is so important to show the public what it is they're really paying for. And it's that entire process and the maintenance thereof, whether it's a pump, or
and the safety of the water,
the safety of the water,
coming out of our taps. We don't talk about
the
it
quality,
enough.
the quality, definitely water quality is key, and so that's something that will be out there for us.
All right. So it happens this Friday at the Memorial Park. It starts at 9 o'clock.
Yes. Well, the opening ceremony is at 9. The
Okay.
actual fair is from 10 to 3.
Okay.
But if you want to come out for the opening ceremonies, by all means.
Public is welcome.
Yes, public.
And my final question, just in terms of what we can all do for conservation, is this a time that we should consider going back to our roots and maybe getting our vats in place and having our own backup water supply?
Definitely, nothing was wrong with catching water in vats. I mean, at one point, you could not tell the elderly that the rainwater is not good. There's nothing wrong with the water.
That.
Yes.
Don't be mistaken.
Right.
I still can't. Yeah.
Right. There's nothing wrong with being a great water steward. And
Yeah.
a great water steward means using your water resources wisely. It falls from the sky. It's free. You have your vat. You know, use your vat. There's nothing wrong with using a bucket to bathe. It's more efficient if you want to go financial wise with BWS, so we don't have that $200 bill at the end of the month. Use your bucket. I mean, we used to survive on 1 bucket of water to bathe compared to 13.5 buckets now. So it's basically just being wise, being conscientious, knowing that your usage will affect someone else's. Like we said, ridge to reef. What happens in the mountains trickles down to the shore, and we don't want anyone to be disenfranchised. One of the pillars is equality. So I think once we focus on equality, we're one step ahead.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining me this morning and talking about this very important resource. Best of luck on Friday at the World Water Day Expo.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about a brand new program being conducted by the YWCA, and it's called Creating a Safe Space Agenda. You'll find out all about it after the break. Stay tuned.